Hello, hello. It is time to look at the summer of 2022 and the 4 anime I watched that kind of sort of aired during that season. Actually, only 2 of them did, and one of them was continuing from last season, but whatever. We watched some shows. I have some thoughts. As always, we're going to work our way through them, starting with the stuff that I didn't watch. And this is a long list this season. This season actually turned out to be pretty insane, and there was a lot of shows that seemed really interesting. They got a lot of praise that I really wish I had time for, but I just didn't. This one I heard was quite interesting. I remember looking at it when we were doing our preview video and thinking, yeah, this could be neat. It kind of seemed to have like a monogatari appeal. And I did indeed hear some praise from a few people. But I don't know, there's like all these shows that I kind of think of are like diet monogatari, and I'm kind of like, I would rather just rewatch the original monogatari than watch these necessarily. So who knows if I'll ever get to this one. This I was excited to watch because I really enjoyed the original, and I thought the premise, we have a demon lord reincarnated into the real world after the demon realm is destroyed, that old hat. Except that he's totally impoverished and doesn't really understand modern society and ends up working at a McDonald's-type restaurant. I really enjoyed the first season. I thought the way they expanded on that premise was a lot of fun. And I thought, there's still a lot of room for this to grow. A lot of funny jokes and stuff. But, I don't know, it just didn't happen. I watched, the first episode. There was a baby. It seemed interesting. But I just didn't have time to see it through. I think I'll probably just end up reading the manga, because the production is good, but it's not so crazy good that I absolutely need to see it. This I heard so much praise for. The anime watching club that I'm intermittently a member of was watching it and praised it to high heaven, and was kind of shocked that I hadn't watched any of it yet, and I still haven't watched any of it. Even though nothing but praise the entire run, I just did not have time. This is going to go on what I think of as There's kind of the immediate backlog of shows that I want to get to as soon as possible. Then there's kind of the delayed backlog of I could see myself in the near future if maybe I'm with a friend or something that also wants to see it. We just kind of marathon through it. And then there's the big backlog of hundreds of shows that I have some interest in, that I think I would enjoy, that it feels important that I watch. But there's no plans whatsoever, and I feel like it would get out-prioritized even if there was a chance. So this one I would say is going on the medium backlog, which is a big list, but it's not a crazy list, so I do hope to get to it at some point. It sounds fantastic. It's got shenanigans. It's got amazing animation, I've heard. It's got a nice blend of action stuff, slice-of-life stuff, world building, Yuri. Yeah, this one seems like it has it all for me. It's a real shame that I didn't get to it. This one I watched a couple episodes of because the aforementioned anime group was watching it, and I was like, yeah, this seems fun. I'd like to catch up with it and watch it with them. It does seem really good. It operates on this mode where there's so many avenues for jokes, which I think is cool. So the premise is this dude was living in an isekai for 30 years, and then finally has revived from his truck-induced coma and is back in the real world. So you get kind of isekai parody jokes. You get jokes around this dude that still has magical powers from the isekai, trying to make money off of that in the real world. You get jokes about him being totally detached from society for the past 20 years, has no idea what the modern world is like. You get jokes just around him being an otaku and his nephew being an otaku, and just otaku culture in general, but with this generational gap. It's a lot of fun. It seemed like a real formula for success. The production was pretty cool too. Again, maybe I'll just end up reading the manga, but I definitely wanted to see more. I wanted to see where all of these different comedic avenues would lead. This one, I wanted to watch at least one episode just because I was curious about how they would produce it, but I didn't even get to that. It's just a manga I really enjoy about this shogi club. The guy wants to confess to his senpai, but he wants to beat her in shogi first. It's just very, very cute. Good rom-com. Lots of shogi action. And I thought, the production for this could be really good, how they depict the shogi scenes and stuff, but I didn't really hear much praise for it specifically, outside of just yeah, the manga's good, this is good too. So it's probably nothing that crazy. This I really wanted to watch because I super enjoyed the first season. I think I gave it like a 9.5. I was totally enamored, blown away. But in my review of the first season, if you recall, I was like, my praise for the storytelling is such that it seems like it would make a good manga. that was how I described it. And then since then, I actually have read the manga, and I love it, and it's fantastic. And I realized how much Cloverworks deviated at the end of the first season, and then my need to see this, to kind of see what happens and to enjoy more of that world, was superseded by like this morbid curiosity of like, where is Cloverworks going to go from here with their anime original ending? Based on what I've seen, it looks like they kind of like veer back onto the course of the manga, maybe a little awkwardly. But at this point, I don't know. The production was fantastic. Lots of really great direction and visuals, and just the color palette of everything, like in that rich, dusty Victorian elegance, and then contrasted that with like the stark blackness of the shadows was so cool. But I don't know. I think I'll just continue reading the manga. Yeah, man. I wanted to check this out because it's Shaft, and it's just such a bizarre licensing thing that they're making a Ruby series, that they're animating this like Western CGI web animation thing. I was very curious. I wasn't super optimistic because Shaft has been, really hit and miss lately. But I thought it could be good, and at the very least, I wanted to see kind of what production style they were going with, and then I just never did. This I was super excited about because my logic was, why would they make an adaptation of this old, long completed anime or manga if they weren't going to do it for the love, if they weren't going to do a good job? But apparently it's terrible. Like, god-awful, flat, stilted, janky production. Just absolute minimum effort. So I'm never going to watch this, except out of maybe like really morbid curiosity, but it's so bizarre. It's such a beloved series. It has such a dedicated cult following. It's one of those hits that like becomes, in the canon of manga you recommend people that are getting into manga. And it's like, how could they butcher it so badly? It's bizarre. This I was kind of interested in watching. I watched the first season and I enjoyed it. I was a little skeptical of the second season because they went from just having 5 girls, which I thought was a really great change of pace and had all sorts of benefits that I talked about in my review of the first season, all the way back up to 9 girls, which is your standard Love Live formula. And I was like, oh, it's probably just going to kind of turn into a normal Love Live show, which I'm not super interested in. But I don't know, because I didn't watch it, so let me know. This I really wanted to watch. It's a new Science Sharu show. I still know almost nothing about it, but Science Sharu, especially when Yuasa's involved, is almost guaranteed something that I'm going to find really interesting, if not like a hands-down masterpiece, at least something that will really spark my curiosity and stuff. I just didn't get to it. Again, this is on like the medium list. I would say like this one and Like I Recall are like this one are in like that medium list where it's like I'm just looking for an opportunity. Maybe same with Ruby Shaft, but I could see that one actually just being bad. Also, the Strike Witches Shaft show, like, for all the same reasons as Ruby, I was like, well, I gotta see what this is. I gotta see what they did. I will go on record and say I actually really enjoy the first 2 seasons of Strike Witches and the first spin-off where they're like in the Russia analog. I know, it's a pervert show for perverts, whatever. The action scenes are kind of meh and full of fan service, but I think the characters are actually really good. I think the character dynamics are great. I think the world building is great. The setting is great. The slice of life stuff is really great. I think it's a super, super underrated show. Just because it gets dismissed as, haha, they don't got no pants. And it's true, they don't got any pants whatsoever. You can see their butts like all the time, but it's got a lot of value, and of course, the fact that this is like an idol unit of Strike Witches that like sing and dance and stuff. I don't know, is that better or worse? We didn't get a chance to know. This one I was really curious about. It's about like comedy, people becoming comedians and stuff. I'm reading a manga about that as well right now that I really, really enjoy. It seemed like it would just be a lot of fun, good kind of comfy slice of life vibes, but I didn't get to it. Alas. even more. So this I'm actually watching now, so expect a review for it in the next video. I'm watching it with the anime watching group. We're about, oh, I gotta eat its humps. We're about halfway through right now. I'm really, really enjoying it. Studio Trigger just never disappoints. And even when they disappoint, you're still in awe of how crazy this disappointment is. But no, it's good. Good plot, good characters. It's awesome that it's just a Netflix original, so they can really push the limits with like nudity and gore and swearing and violence and everything. Phenomenal. Yeah, check it out. Really good. This is the pseudo-sequel to the Tatami Galaxy, and I suppose also The Night is Young, Walk On Girl, which are absolutely in the Keats canon, the Keats Criterion, whatever. I love them. I love them. I love them. Love them. Every reason to think this one will also be great. This one, it wasn't even that I didn't have time for it. I think it aired all at once as like a Netflix special, maybe like sometime late September. So I don't even know if it's out. If it's out, I think I will try to watch it very soon. It's on the shortest of backlists, the shortest of backlogs, where as soon as possible I'm going to get into the habit of watching it. So these ones you can expect reviews for in the next video, hopefully. Okay, let's get to stuff that I did watch. This one was very, very highly anticipated for me. The second season of Made in Abyss. And here I thought at last, at the stage 6 layer of the Abyss, the normies would finally get filtered. I don't know if I'm in just like a weird situation, or maybe I have no idea what an actual normie is these days. But it seemed like a lot of people that aren't really that deep into anime, certainly aren't so deep into anime that they would normally watch a show so depraved, were watching Made in Abyss, just because the production is so fantastic, and the soundtrack is so fantastic, and the idea is so compelling, that they essentially get tricked, and suddenly they're in so deep they can't return, and they have to watch all sorts of vile, fetishy, unpleasant things. But I thought, here, having read the manga for this arc, I was like, this might be the limit. And it's not just because it's still very grotesque and very violent, very upsetting, very fetishy, although it still is, of course. And in this arc, they find even new, unprecedented ways to haunt you and disturb you and kind of wrench your soul. There's a lot of scenes in this arc that gave me this really horrible, like, squishy, squick feeling. And I'd only ever really gotten this type of feeling before from reading Fluffy Pony and Yukari abuse comics. Do not look these up. This was stuff that on threads on 4chan people would dump to shock people, to horrify people, to derail threads, and to drive people away from threads. So think about that on 4chan. Now I know 4chan has quite the reputation, and some of it is unearned, some of it is earned, but think about that. What are you going to post on 4chan that will shock and horrify people? It's stuff like this. Don't look these up. And this is so weird to me because it's like, if you've made it this far, if you still find these characters endearing and compelling and you want to see their adventures, it feels so aggressive on the part of the creator to be like, well, it's time to watch them suffer. Once again, you've made it this far, you're going to be miserable. But no. The reason I thought people would get filtered here is because it's confusing. When I was first reading the manga, to be fair, I did kind of marathon it. Like, I basically started reading the manga after the first season finished, and at that point, it was maybe like... No, it was a bit later than that. Maybe it was like a year after. I was just on a big manga reading binge, and I was like, well, I like the anime, so I'll read the manga for this. And I think, yeah, it was about like halfway through this arc, so I read all the way up until that point, all at once, and then month by month I was reading the new chapters, and I was just like, I don't understand what's going on. It was tough, trying to just get through a lot at once, and then it became tough in a different way when there was a month in between and I had to remember what was going on. It's just really visually busy. So many strange characters. Sometimes these characters have like many different forms visually. So many complex like mechanics of how this society operates, how people interface with each other. even the language you don't understand, a very complicated timeline that all becomes relevant at once, kind of going through this entire story of this previous generation of explorers, everything that happened to them still having impact on what's happening now. The setting's so bizarre, just mysteries layered inside of mysteries. I often would read a chapter and just be like, what? What does this mean? Is this good? And I think watching it, I understood a lot more, which is great. They rearranged some of the story elements to make the presentation a little more clear. The cause and effect were a little more linked by rearranging things. Having stuff in color helped a lot too, just in like distinguishing characters, understanding what the heck is going on. It was a lot of moments where I finally kind of understood, oh, like, that's how that works. Ew. Which was unpleasant, but kind of satisfying in being demystifying. So I think, when we talk about kind of confusing plot lines, complicated plot lines that kind of expect a lot from the viewer, I often use this dichotomy of wow/huh, that if you're going to be presented something you don't really understand, you should at least understand the significance of it. You should at least understand, is this a big deal, and how should I feel about it, like emotionally, even if I don't really understand the full ramifications for all the details of the plot. Essentially, you should see something you don't understand and go, wow, instead of seeing something you don't understand and going, huh? And for me, still, this arc, even having experienced it twice and understanding a lot better what's going on, a lot of the big, impactful scenes, I'm kind of just going, huh? And honestly, I think the biggest thing the anime added for me in helping with this and rectifying this is the soundtrack. The soundtrack, of course, is god tier. Kevin Perkins did it again. Some of them have been stuck in my head ever since I watched it, and I've been going back to seek them out. Sometimes that would be the thing most cluing me into how I was supposed to feel about a given scene, but otherwise I would be just baffled. Am I applauding this? Am I afraid of this? Is this disgusting? Is this triumphant? Because, right at the foundation, this is just such a confusing arc. We really don't understand. What is our team trying to accomplish here? Who are the good guys? Who are the bad guys? Who's a threat? Who's an ally? What is needing to change? What change are they trying to drive from the situation that they've appeared in? Overall, is this village, good or bad? So you're kind of reeling with all these questions. You're trying to, parse, what is the throw line of this arc going to be? What are they going to achieve? What is going to change? And then you finally figure out this whole tragic backstory, which is very, very upsetting. And you're like, wow, that's brutal. But then it doesn't really answer any of those above questions. They just get even more muddled, where you're just like, I still don't understand how I'm supposed to feel about any of this. I still don't understand, what I'm hoping will happen, what I'm dreading will happen and stuff. And I don't want to make this seem like it's bad writing. I honestly don't think this is bad writing. I think it's all very intentional to give this very muddled perspective on this, where you aren't given a clear path towards some emotional catharsis, some engagement in the story. I think it's just very alien writing, that the author is writing from a very personal place to people that they can personally understand on a very deep level, and ignoring any other concerns or any other potential audience. Because it would have been so easy to make this arc, oh, we got down here, hey, oh, there's another dastardly white whistle, oh, what is this kind of creepy, inhumane person doing? What are they up to? We gotta fight him, right? Which is a very big simplification of the Bondrewd arc. Bondrewd arc was fantastic. But that could have been the baseline. Right from the start, we knew Bondrewd was doing something terrible. We weren't really sure what the depth of it was. But we knew he had to be stopped. We knew he had caused people to suffer. And we knew that they had to get through him to go to the next layer, right? It was so clear. It was so easy right from the start to know what is our team trying to accomplish. Trying to match up those sort of plot points and expectations for what's going on in this arc, you just can't. and it's fascinating to me that he chose to write a more difficult story the fact that despite this huge successful series, which has attracted a way bigger audience than he could ever have imagined, the author is so uncompromising, so eager to do this weirdness. I think that's very admirable. I think that's actually very beautiful. And the resonance it has with this very small group of people that the author can really connect to, it is like in the series, they talk about that warmth in the darkness. Because, I don't know, I've been listening to the OST a lot, and I read through the YouTube comments, and the amount of people that are still like, I cried my eyes out when I saw this scene. I was so moved, and now every time I hear this song, I cry. And I'm like, okay, like, I didn't have that strong an emotional reaction, but clearly some people still did. Clearly some people are able to still link with the author that deep. And that's beautiful. Okay. And of course, you know, the OST, the voice acting, the animation, the Sakuga and stuff is still just fantastic at the level that we would expect. So I'm happy to give this like a solid 9. It's a great show. It's certainly not for everyone. It's certainly not for like 80% of the people that somehow got tricked into watching it. But I'm really excited that it's continuing to get super high quality anime adaptations. I'm excited to see it through in the manga and then many, many years later in the anime. Let's look forward to more. Okay, next we're going to talk about Summertime Rendering. This is a very, very hyped up show, adapting in full across 2 seasons, a really beloved, critically acclaimed cult classic type manga. Just like it should have happened with Lucifer and the Biscuit Hammer. Except this time they did not fumble the ball. They really did a good job adapting this, but what did I think of it? Well, here are some things I liked about it. The basic mechanics are pretty cool. This isn't really a big spoiler, you learn this stuff in like episode 1, but essentially this dude is caught in a time loop. He keeps starting over this 3-day period every time he dies, and he's dying a lot because the island is infested with these shadow doppelgangers that can take the appearance, memories, personality, everything of an existing person, except that they're murderous. They're trying to kill everybody. And you're like, that's pretty cool. that enough, I think. Trying to investigate this shadowy invasion, trying to dodge death, but then sometimes strategically dying, trying to manage resources of, oh no, is the front half of the time loop advancing, you know, all this stuff. That's pretty cool. And the early episodes, I think, had a really good sense of, like, deduction. You could actually meaningfully speculate a couple moves ahead of oh, this person must be a shadow because we saw them there on the last loop, and how could they be there if they were there before, blah, blah, blah. Oh, and if they were a shadow, that would explain this. Okay, so the next loop, he's got to make sure to go here and then here. And I was like, that's cool. That's really cool. If they could keep up that kind of tension and that kind of speculation through the whole series, I think I would have been super invested. And I was really impressed with how little it got in its own way over this sort of mechanic and these sorts of explanations. The MC catches on really quickly. It expects the audience to catch on pretty quickly too. There's no tedious over explanation. There's no scenes where the MC is totally baffled and the audience is screaming, "You're in a time loop, you're in a time..." That's not the real Mew or whatever. Usually the MC catches on just as quickly as you do, which is very nice and keeps up this nice pacing. The production was very nice too, very tight, very fluid. Not really the most interesting direction, I think. Kind of like Hollywood movie style, you know, where it's good action scenes, but action scenes that could just be done in live action, you know? Like nothing that really feels too anime-y, but still very impressive Sakuga and stuff. Okay, now the stuff I didn't like so much. It felt like, you know, in the first couple episodes, these mechanics that I explained to you, which again, it's not really a spoiler, it's right there at the start. Those at the start are twists. Oh my god, that's not the real Mew. Oh my god, we're in a time loop, right? And instead of just kind of like exploring the ramifications of those new mechanics, they get like addicted that every episode has to have like a bombshell like that. Every episode needs to defy your expectations of what's possible and stuff. And it becomes kind of addicted to these twists. It just keeps piling on more and more mechanics and then exceptions of, oh, well, you know, sometimes a shadow can revert the memories of another shadow, and then restore them in the memories of the original, but sometimes it can't, and then this is like a good shadow, but not always, and it's like they just keep piling things on such that in the end you're dealing with like mechanics that just subvert your expectations of other mechanics, that just subvert your expectations of other mechanics, that in turn subvert your expectations of reality. But it's so disconnected, and it expects you to like understand and care about each intermediary level so much that it becomes so tedious to me. And then you can't really meaningfully speculate on anything either, because you know at any given point any given rule can just go out the window, or it will be supplemented by like another rule or something, and they start having these like twists of, yeah, didn't you know you can store guns in here? And it's like I also really didn't like any of the setting. Like, I didn't like the characters very much. It was cool that the MC was actually smart and caught on to things quickly, but I just found him like very bland and unlikable. All of the other characters, again, just like very generic, not interesting. The little like comedic break stuff doesn't really do much for me. Just kind of seemed like obligatory, and you know, with some pacing, every 2 episodes they'd have some stupid joke that seemed very cliche, and I was like, the setting of this rural island full of mysteries and stuff, I just feel like there's no real surprises. Oh snap, there's a cult here? What? No way. This isolated community would be worshipping an old forgotten god? Are you kidding? And it just, nothing surprised me, nothing seemed that interesting. The action scenes, like I said before, were well done, but very just like Hollywood bang bang, whoosh, bang bang bang. Nothing that seemed that creative or expressive. Just most of the stuff that happened, I was just like, okay, like, it's kind of like genre switching, having to explore spooky areas, kind of like horror vibes, and then more like kind of like kaiju fighting, big monsters and stuff. Everything that happened, I was just like, I just wasn't into it. So like, there's always a few of these really critically acclaimed thriller animes. And they get a lot of hype, they get a lot of attention, and I just never like them when I watch them. So I really want to get into this. Why doesn't this genre land for me, the anime twist-core thrillers? Like, there are exceptions, there are a few that I like. Death Note, I would say, counts as an all-time classic. I'm not going to sing Death Note's praises to the ends of the earth or anything, but I liked it. I saw it when I was a kid, and I liked it. And that might be it. Everyone since Death Note, I've just kind of been like, eh. So let's try to drill into this. Because I don't really watch this sort of genre in general, but there are some Western ones that really worked for me that I really, really enjoyed. And I expect that there's a lot more Western ones that I would like if I gave them a chance. And there's definitely a lot more Western ones that I like than anime ones, which is interesting. So Barry I love, Twin Peaks, I don't know if we should count Twin Peaks, but if it counts, I love it. Breaking Bad, I think, is like a definitive example of this genre. The Rehearsal, I don't know if we can count that, but yeah, I don't know. It's maybe a stretch to say that there's like a ton I like. I didn't think too long about this list. I'm sure I could come up with some others that I liked, but so I think the biggest difference is how these series write characters between Western thrillers with twists and anime thrillers with twists. In the Western shows, the characters have these like tragic faults that lead to downfalls, and we see the arc of their character exposing these tragic faults more and more and more, and then we see the inevitable cathartic downfall that comes about because of these tragic faults. And then, usually in anime twist-core, though, at least for the protagonist characters, they become, like, more sympathetic, more endearing, more sentimental. So the former kind of makes, like, the character compelling, right? Because you can see they're heading for the cliff. You get a lot of investment in them, but it's, like, a wary investment where you're like, this guy just doesn't seem good. Like, It's pretty rare that a character can emerge from a series like this kind of unscathed, right? Usually the arc is that they become kind of more detestable and more abhorrent, and you become more and more kind of distanced from them as you're watching in horror as they go off the rails. Whereas the latter, in anime, they kind of rely on the character being compelling already, and usually this just kind of like makes them less interesting, to me at least. Oh, you learn they have a tragic backstory. Oh, their brother's dead. Oh, you learn that, you know, they have some secret connection with this overall plot. But there's like a good reason for it, and it makes them more sympathetic in their motivations and stuff. And then in the end, there's like these really sentimental scenes where they've finally achieved happiness, or, you know, they're dying and it's so sad, right? And then if you don't really care that much about the characters, if none of that stuff has been hidden, and when you find out this tragic backstory, you're just kind of like, eh. Then when you see the really cathartic scene of, and now they can finally live in happiness, it's just dull. It's just, I don't know, it just does nothing. So why is it that I couldn't build up any interest in these characters? Because, like, yeah, okay, they don't really have this, like, tragic arc thing going on, but the idea is that they're meant to be endearing and fun, and you want to see them happy and stuff. So why didn't I? Why was I just kind of meh on all the characters? Honestly, I think it's just that they're not that interesting. They just don't really have the special sauce. Like, there's a couple interests, they got a sad backstory, there's some motivation, some quirks, some aspect of their personality is exaggerated. There's nothing really built from it, because they're, in the end, always just sort of vehicles for the twists, vehicles for the story, you know? They're agents in the story. But there's no real sense of them having kind of like a life of their own that you're invested in. There's nothing that you really want to see them succeed at besides making it through this nightmare scenario or whatever, right? Like, I don't know. I'm sure other people felt differently, but for me, it's like, it kind of comes down to the characters. If the characters aren't interesting, then I can't really get caught up in the story for the sake of the story. And if I can't, like, the story itself isn't that interesting, just none of this works for me. I'm giving it a 7, which is a pretty low score for me. But at the same time, it still is like a positive score. Like, I think it is well done. I think all the production stuff was well done. There's nothing like wrong with it. I can see why it's so popular. It has a really good sense of like escalation. It's just that for me personally, all of the escalations were like eye rolling. And I could imagine if I was like into the characters, if I really was invested into the characters, then it would be like 100 times more compelling. But I just wasn't. So for me, it's like a 7. And before I talked a lot about, you know, what do these scores mean? Like, what am I trying to signal with these scores? And I think it's like, for me, a good anime thriller is like kaiji, right? I love kaiji. I love the works of Fukumoto. So if you're watching this, and you like the Keats the YouTube channel, and you have similar tastes to me, this is not kaiji. This is very far from kaiji. So that's kind of what I'm trying to signal here, is that the sort of things that would make someone want to watch the show, for people like me, are not there. But it's still fine. Okay, anyways, moving on. Onipan! This was airing last season. I was mostly keeping up with it, and then I saw something that said it was 60 episodes. It was going to have a 60 episode run. So I was like, okay, well, I'll watch all of this eventually. I don't really need to keep up with it because there's like a bajillion episodes and they're all short, so whatever. But no, I misunderstood. It aired as 63-minute chunks, and then groups of 5 of those chunks would be a 15-minute episode, and then I was watching just 15-minute episodes, so there's only 12. And when I realized this mistake, I was so devastated that there wasn't actually going to be another 48 episodes of Onipan, because this show kicks ass. So basically I picked this up because I saw it on AnyChart, and it looked really goofy, and it was done by Wit Studio, who makes a lot of bangers. Now that they've been freed from Attack on Titan. I realized pretty quickly when I was watching that this is a kids show, that it's airing during a kids block for kids, But at that point, I didn't even reconsider slightly. I was 1,000% down. I haven't really watched any shows for kids since the original Aikatsu, which I enjoyed. Sometimes it really, really hits, and we'll get into why that is. Or maybe it transcends. Like, maybe, I think this could be a kids show that even people who would never watch kids anime, that don't see the appeal of kids anime, could like. Okay, so here's the premise. We got an alternate reality where Japanese Oni were real. Way back in mythological times, they were the enemy of mankind. Heroes like Momotaro would go and fight the Oni. But now, in modern days, they're just kind of this parallel other human species. They just have horns. They're totally integrated in society. They have normal jobs, normal lives, normal homes, normal families. But there's still some misconceptions. There's still some bullying that happens towards Onis. There's still some kids that read Oni fairy tales and are like, oh, is that true? Is my neighbor gonna eat me? Okay, so then we have our heroes, 3 high school Oni from Onigashima, that are sent to the mainland to promote the public image of Oni. Let's dispel these myths. Let's show them that Oni are kind, friendly people that'll help them out. So maybe your assumption, given that this is like a show for kids, there's going to be some kind of like allegory of tolerance. Lessons are going to be like, don't judge people on how they look. It's going to be heartwarming. There's going to be lessons every episode. Well, you're wrong. See, I think this is a pretty reasonable assumption if you kind of know how Western kids TV works. And I'm probably painting with too broad a brush. It's not like I've seen a lot of Western kids shows recently, but my understanding from kind of what I remember from when I was a kid and just generally how this stuff seems to work, is that it's pretty moralizing, right? The kids shows are all about teaching you a lesson, about making you a good person, teaching you to share, teaching you not to judge, teaching you to get help when you need it, teaching you not to keep secrets that'll hurt other people, but at the same time not to rat people out, whatever. I don't know. Lots of messages, lots of stuff. And I think this was all kind of started in a backlash of era of kids TV shows that were just toy ads, and then there was all sorts of like commissions and PBS and TVO in Canada and all of these different networks were like, we got to provide an alternative, we got to provide something like wholesome and helpful, educational. And sometimes Japanese kids shows are like this too. I can certainly think of some examples, but just as often, they're really stupid and irreverent. And sometimes they just straight up subvert expectations of lessons within them, that you think that the show is heading towards some sort of moral, and then it just poops on it and is like, nah. So Onipan is one such hyper stupid show. Our characters are lazy, they're motivated incorrectly or totally unmotivated at all. Their relationships are these weird, unhealthy codependencies that are sometimes addressed but never really solved. Their titular transforming superpower, where they put on the Onipan, which are these big, poofy, old-style Oni underwear that, like, mythological depictions of Oni will wear. They just put it on over their clothes and transform. But the transformations don't do anything. It's just cosplay. It just gives them a different outfit, but no, like, powers. and often the joke is just like, that we still can't do this. Why are we dressed like this? We still can't do this. Their plans usually, like, fail entirely, or they succeed in a way that afterwards is revealed to be kind of pointless and irreverent, and doesn't actually contribute to their overall goal of raising the perception of Oni. Sometimes actually counteracting that and making them seem terrible. The side characters are often really deranged, single-minded, and often they just cannot be helped. That, you know, as you would expect in like a kid's show, is a lot of scenarios of, oh, someone we know has a problem, let's try to help them. And then they just can't. The main goals of the series are often totally sidelined by just some nonsense. Every episode starts with them kind of vaguely having an idea of how to raise the public perception of Oni, and then it just goes totally off the mark. But then all of this is balanced by the odd scene of genuine camaraderie between the Oni, you know, that they really are trying to work together, and sometimes they succeed, and sometimes they make a difference, and it's nice, and it just kind of gives everything a nice warmth, that it's not totally cynical, it's just stupid. the lesson isn't, oh, you should never try, you're always gonna fail. Nothing so nihilistic like that. Instead, it's just like, things are absurd. These stupid Oni can't do it. But it doesn't say anything about you, the kids watching at home. You should still try at stuff, I guess. I don't know. It's so silly. and it's like, this is kind of, I think, typical humor of Japanese kids shows. Just this kind of like irreverent subversion of well, that didn't work. Ha ha ha. It's kind of going back to the like straight man bokeh type comedy where you have one stupid character trying things, and then in the end there's this kind of like flattening, dry, deadpan, dry wit of none of this worked. Was that supposed to achieve what you were trying to do? That kind of humor is hilarious to me, and maybe I sound like a child saying that, but I don't know, man. It just hits. I was cracking up a lot watching this series. And then all of this is depicted, though, through Wit Studios' godly production. This show is such a joy to watch. The production was so good. Because it's a kids anime, it doesn't really have that like really kind of crazy cinematic feel that Wit normally does. Instead, it's just kind of like this clean, down-to-earth, very like simple production. Kind of like a lot of like kind of sitcom framing and stuff. But it's very goofy too. Lots of weird diegetic breaks. Lots of weird kind of like animation style breaks and stuff. It's very creative in that way. It kind of reminds me of like Shaft with like Hidamari sketch and stuff, that they're just constantly popping into imaginations and diagrams and depictions. So colorful, so bright. And then all of this is sprinkled with the occasional action scene that really leans into Studio Wit's traditional strengths. And suddenly everything is super cinematic with big panning, spinning camera angles and crazy fluid choreography and just it's just like mind-blowing because everything up until that point is just so goofy and strange, and then suddenly you're seeing like god tier animation. Excellent show. Part of me just wants to give it a 10 praising it right now because it has all this stuff going on, but I'll give it a 9. I was very, very happy with it, but it is like pretty insubstantial. It's not like life-changing. It's not gonna alter your course of anime viewing from here on. But I was just, absolutely happy with it. Great show. Hope they make more. Check it out. I hope it becomes some sort of runaway phenomenon, or at least it achieves the sort of success that something like iCats had among people outside its target demographic. Probably not, because iCats had a whole, like, trading card empire behind it, whereas this is just stupid Oni. Good times. Okay. Lastly, we have the second season of Komi-san Cannot Communicate. Hooray, more Komi-san. I really, really like the last season of this. Even though I often say, I don't really watch anime for manga I'm reading. It just seems unnecessary, especially with all this other stuff I want to watch. I just couldn't resist, and I still came back to this just because I enjoyed the first season so very much. And everything I praised for the first season still applies here. We have this very creative Shaft-Life direction with several flavors of really well-done sakuga. Either really crazy, over-the-top genre parodies, like whenever they're playing some stupid game and suddenly everything is a over-the-top parody of like a sports shonen series. And then some moments of really tender, really dramatic, intense character acting as the characters muster up the courage to say something or reach out or whatever. The staples of the last season's production, stuff like having dialogue bubbles pop up with additional narrations, really rapidly shifting into like shows within shows, the rapid fire reactions from all of the crazies in the cast. They feel kind of like comfier now, like before you were kind of wowed with how much they were doing and how many different decisions they were making. But now it's kind of to be expected. So it almost feels like more fun, that it's like you can appreciate them for what they are and what they add instead of their novelty. They feel a little bit more lived in, they feel a bit more classic, that they're kind of honing and making comfy this particular style of direction. The highlight, of course, still obviously Najumi's voice acting amazing. They're just screaming all the time. Really nicely paced too. This impressed me a lot. This was something I was kind of worried about, and I was really I was kind of, I was like, well, I want to watch this because I enjoyed the first season so much and I just want to enjoy it. But if it starts getting tedious, I'm going to drop it. But it was super nicely paced. Good balance of little arcs, really sentimental moments, progress, the relationships actually progressing, and total goofy irreverence that can easily take over an entire episode of just some bizarre tangent that they're going to explore. But how long can that hold? So here I feel like the series stands at the gates of progress bait. Because, this series has been running for a long, long time. And if they're going to keep adapting it at this pace, they've got seasons for years and years to come. And this time they didn't actually announce Season 3 right away. At the end of Season 1, they announced Season 2, which made me really excited. But, I don't know. I feel like they got to keep going. I think it's doing well. I think it's popular. The manga's certainly very popular. Will it keep going? I don't know. I assume it'll keep going. Let's assume it keeps going and talk about what that means. Because next season, there's still some pretty major bangers for, significant changes, plot progression, stuff like that. They're starting second year. There's a whole new cast of characters that comes with. But then after that, kind of slows down. And maybe this is just my memory, that I can't remember the major arcs in this part of the series. But that alone kind of indicates that there's maybe not that many memorable arcs. And I can certainly remember the feeling when I first read it of, oh boy, it's time for progress bait. Which, if you don't know this term, which is fair because I made it up, it's in these rom-com series. The main plot line, of course, is will the male lead and the female lead, will they get together? And it's always like, oh, it seemed really close that he was going to confess. Oh, her feelings almost leaked out, but then it's kind of like a one step forward, one step back, constantly baiting. Oh, there could be a big revelation, and then nah. And to be fair, I think Komi-san is one of the best progress bait infinite regression rom-coms out there. It just has a lot of ingredients to make that not feel so tedious, not feel so frustrating. There's the huge cast of extremely wacky characters that facilitates this wide range of genres and parodies and bizarre situations. They're willing to do really bold experiments and just totally changing the genre of the manga for a little bit. Even changing the format of it from 4-koma to who knows what nonsense. Sometimes these are failures. Sometimes it's hard to get through these more experimental arcs or recurring chapters or whatever. But sometimes they really hit too, and I think the very fact that they're experimenting is something that keeps it fresh. There's an endless array of side couples and crushes and stuff, and you can still sprinkle progress on those without having to give too much to the main couple. Still very stingy though. Even the side couple progress is very stingy. It doesn't get too far. But whenever hope becomes too dim, whenever you think, oh my god, literally nothing has happened with our main couple in a year, boom! Major progress. It's super moving. You read it and you want to cry, and it's beautiful. They understand the balance of the infinite regression rom-com. It's a tough thing to do. But in the end, it still is a progress bait infinite regression rom-com. They still are going to milk this series for the end of time and spent, as many chapters as possible excruciatingly inching towards any kind of cathartic reunion. And I realized when I was thinking about this, I will happily read these progress bait rom-coms in manga for years and years and years. And sure, I might at the end of each chapter go, can't believe they didn't confess there. Can't believe they came up with another lame-brained excuse to keep them apart. Whatever, right? But I'll keep reading it, and I'll still feel overall happy with the series. I'll still, look forward to new chapters and get excited when they're out and eagerly read them. But in anime, I have a really, really high bar for it. If I didn't sense that they were going to hit certain big progression plot points in the season, I probably would have dropped it. And I kind of feel like going forward, I don't know. It's interesting. It reveals like a very big difference in the medium, and I think it just kind of comes down to investment. But it's like a much bigger investment for me to sit down and watch an episode of anime, which takes 22 minutes. I can't really do anything else during that time. Maybe I'll check my phone a few times, but I can't like have a conversation with someone. Versus manga, which I can just have open. I'm doing all sorts of other stuff. I'm working. I'm listening to music. I'm watching a YouTube video, and then just kind of at my own pace as it feels stimulating. As I need a break or whatever, I read a couple pages. And it's not so much that I'm blowing off manga or whatever, but it's just that I can still fully invest myself in parallel. Whereas here, I have to fully invest myself in absence of anything else, right? So it's like the kind of genres I enjoy for each of them becomes quite different, which is kind of interesting. So, I don't know. If they keep going with the anime, will they compress some things? Will they skip some plot points so that they can combat this and they can still have meaningful progress in each season, nicely spaced, nicely paced? Or will this anime just continue to have such great production, so much fun, such great voice acting, that it'll actually clear the bar and I'll just keep watching it even if it is the endless 8 of constant attempts and failures of expressing your feelings? I don't know. But I was very happy with this. Watashi mo suki desu. We'll give it a 9 too. So overall a great season. I didn't watch anywhere near as many shows as I wanted to, but the ones I did were either ones that I really, really enjoyed, or that I found very, very interesting in the things I didn't like about it, or both. So very, very happy with this. And the next season is going to be even better. I really, really hope I can watch all the shows I'm planning to next season because it's absolutely stacked. I say next season, but I mean like this season. Like it's happening now, and I got to get caught up. And I'm really happy to have made this video so that I can do so guilt-free. Hope you had fun watching it. Please look forward to more. Bye-bye.